Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for waiting if you were on the YouTube live stream just a few seconds ago. Thanks for tuning in. These I like to do this session from time to time. I call it budgeting a funding round, and man, this comes from a bit of talking to a lot of founders and kind of seeing the mistakes that happen time and time again as you guys forecast and try to understand your funding rounds and how to budget them. It's not too complicated, but I think founders kind of usually it goes way over their heads when they're trying to run this stuff. So I think that we've come up with this pretty simplified, nice approach on how to do it. And so like in today's session, that's kind of what I want to do. So there's a lot to cover. I'm gonna have a bunch of I have not so many slides, but a lot of downloadable perks that you'll be able to get, like freebies that you'll be able to download as we go along. So let me just arrange my screen and we'll get on it. Okay, sorry, just like there we go. Okay, so budgeting a funding round. How to by the way, if you have questions along the way, I've gotten better at timing all this stuff. So feel free to throw them because sometimes those questions are a bit of contextual on what I'm talking about. So if you have something, just throw it. I'm decent at multitasking. I have the chats here in my desktop, so we can do it. Okay. So let's get to it. So how to budget a funding round. So the only reason why we even started talking about this or helping founders do any of this stuff is because we've been helping founders prepare to pitch investors and kind of help them navigate all this stuff for a few years. And there are these common problems that we keep seeing time and time again around their forecast, or we normally notice this when we look at their pitch decks. So problem number one is that people go out and raise these really arbitrary numbers for rounds. It's like, oh, we're raising a really nice $1 million, or we're raising between $2 and $5 million, and then well, that's a huge range. How much money do you actually need, right? So that's normally a telltale sign that somebody hasn't done their homework when trying to budget or to understand forecast. So that's problem one. Problem two that we see very often is that you see these hockey stick charts on pitch decks, and when a chart is so crazy hockey stick, you know that in the background, what they did is they just took a number, they multiplied it by 300% and then by 300% again, and then that just makes a nice hockey stick. And they put it almost like decoration, but there's no real homework behind that chart. And I see that too many times. So today we're gonna talk a bit about drivers and how to generate forecasts that are actually realistic. And then the last one is, rounds of funding that are focused on months of runway. So it's like, oh, we're raising $1 million to get to for 18 months of runway. It's like, well, that's not necessarily the benchmark that you should be aiming at. You shouldn't raise for a certain amount of time. You should raise to reach the next fundable milestone for your company. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. Okay, so really the solution to all of this, you might have run into this as maybe a pro forma template that your investors might have asked, or you're just trying to come up with a budgeting sheet or runway calculator. Maybe you've Googled one of those. But really, the answer to all of these questions comes in a financial model, and that's what a financial model does. And I know it's a mouthful, and it feels like a finance bro sort of thing, but again, it's not that complicated. So let's demystify financial models a little bit. Let's start with this one. Okay. So this is a very, very basic financial model. Let me make this a little bigger. I mean, actually, that makes it smaller for you. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So this is a very, very basic, or the most basic financial model that we've come up with, but it helps us understand some key points first. So notice some color coding. We're going to use this color coding today a lot. So revenue, of course, is going to be green. Cost of goods sold is going to be this Slidebean red. And then we have sales, general, and admin expenses. So let's start here at the top. So some basic rules, like this is again like a standard financial standard, is that when you're doing forecasts or when you're using a spreadsheet, you have these color coding where some numbers are black and some numbers are blue. Normally, what this means is that a blue number is an input. It's a number that you're expected to input in a model, right? You're expected to add something. So let's just, for the sake of example, say that this company made $10,000 in revenue in January. Okay. And then let's say that the costs, right? So this company is, say, SaaS business, and it made $10,000 in revenue, and it paid about $1,000 worth of AWS fees, right? This is AWS. So what happens here is we have our kind of our first answer, our first term that we need to be familiar with, which is gross profit, right? So basically, a company, when you take the revenue a company made and the cost of generating that revenue, you end up with this, which is your gross profit. So your gross profit is a key number because it always needs to be positive. Your gross profit should never, ever, ever be negative, right? If you're, for example, building some marketplace and you make $10,000 in revenue and you have to pay your providers more than that, then you're obviously losing money and this business is not going to work, right? But gross profit margin should always be positive. And the important thing about gross profit margin is that it's tied to revenue, right? So if I suddenly go out and make $28,000 in revenue, probably my AWS costs are going to scale more or less the same, right? So, maybe 2,000, right? So your gross profit margin across your company's lifetime might shift as you reach some scale, but it's probably going to be a really stable number. So that's one important number to take. Now, the other number that's important here is the rest of the expenses. Where would those go? And that's what we call sales, general, and admin expenses. So I'm going to take Daria from the Zoom session. So Daria is going to be the CEO. So let's set Daria's salary. Let's set, I don't know, I'm going to set that to 80 a year. I'm going to set a start date. For now, I'm just going to use January 25. We're almost done with this year, so I need to change this template, but okay. And then I'm going to add myself as CTO. Let's do that. And we're going to pay ourselves the same, right? So this company, as we add these salaries, is not going to be profitable, right? Because we're now spending, what's that? $13,000 a month. We only made 10,000 and we lose money, but that's fine, right? Like that's fine. We probably, most companies will lose money at first as they set up, as they come up with, as they build products and so on. In reality, the moment that we start paying ourselves is not necessarily the moment when the company will launch, right? Easily we'll have this, right? We'll have some basic AWS expenses, right? That starts after we kind of turn on the servers and start running tests, and revenue might not come for a few months until July, right? And then we'll still need to pay ourselves because we quit our day jobs and we need a salary. So we're paying ourselves and we're building this product. And so this company loses money every month because it's spending all this money in our salaries, but it's not generating any revenue. And that's fine. Again, that's just normal. Now the question is, well, how much money do we need to cover for this? And we have this cash flow line here at the very top, which gives us ending cash balance. Ending cash balance is really just an accumulated number of everything that we've spent, right? So minus 13, then minus 13 again, then minus 13 again. So we end up with minus 87,000 until we start generating a little bit of revenue. But in theory, the money that we would raise is to cover for this, right? So if we were to raise, I don't know, $400,000, we make that funding assumption. We see how now our ending cash balance is positive. We're not running out of money. We're not bankrupt, and that's going to last until a certain point, and then it's gonna run out, right? Money's gonna run out. Yeah, so let me do that with 250. Let me add a few more expenses. This isn't everything, but let me add rent. Let me add utility, SaaS tools. I don't know. So let's do $1,000 of rent. Sorry. We'll budget some $500 for SaaS tools. We'll add another team member. Who do we pick? You're also quiet on the YouTube live stream, guys. I'm gonna pick Edgar from the Zoom session. So it's gonna be a team member. Maybe he'll join later. He'll join in May, right? So we'll notice that we have some functionality here too, right? We have drop downs, so we can pick the months when they start. We have the salary where we're putting the annual salary, and it's just the model is taking care of dividing that into months, right? So we have month by month. But okay, we've added some expenses. But how about revenue, right? We don't want to input revenue just directly. So I added a little functionality here at the very top, which I call the simplest SaaS business model. And what this basically lets you do is say, well, how many new clients are we going to get every month? And how many are we going to lose because of churn? And what's our monthly recurring revenue or our subscription, right? How much are we charging these customers? And yeah, let's kind of follow to what we said, where, we have this AWS expense, we're going to keep that. And we'll say, okay, and if we start working in this in January, we'll probably be done and ready to launch by August. Let's just assume this is 2026, just to avoid confusion. Okay, so we'll probably launch by August. Great. And in August, we're going to get 50 customers, and then 50 in September, 50 in October, and so on. And so all we need to do here is say, well, if our monthly subscription is, say, $50 a month, notice how this gives us some math on revenue, and that gets plugged here into revenue, and that gets plugged here into gross profit. And again, we are still burning money because we have this big team that we hired, but eventually our net operating income becomes positive, right? And we've turned a profit, right? Now we're making money with this company. Now, again, I like to create this sheet because it's a very, very simple, a very, very basic breakdown, just to understand color coding, to understand this number that you should always be looking at, which is your ending cash balance. Right now, we're at minus 48,000, right? So like we still need a little bit of money. In theory, if we were to raise 300,000 at the get-go, just adding a few extra, then that's it, right? Notice that our ending cash balance gets to the really, really, really close, like $700 in the bank. But after that, the company turned a profit, and we start actually growing that bank account, and we're clear, right? We're clear. We've made it. We've made a profitable business. Okay. Now there's something terribly wrong with the spreadsheet that I've been using. There's a big mistake that I made, and I wonder if you can guess what it was. I'll give you guys a sec to answer. Hey guys on the YouTube live stream. Thanks for saying hi. I was wondering if I was speaking into the void. But okay, any takers on that? Like, why is this model trash? Why is that spreadsheet that I did over the course of like 5 minutes? What's wrong with it? No ideas? So quiet today. Okay. I'll give you the answer. All right. So here's a story that assumptions. There you go. Various streams. Maybe a little bit on the right track. Here's a real story that I got from an actual founder. Okay. So founder comes in and says, hey, we're going to launch this product, and we're going to generate 700 orders when we launch, and then we're going to grow that by 10% every month. Kind of like what I did, right? It's like, we're getting 50 customers every month forever, right? Just drag that 50 and that's it. 50 customers every month. Same idea, except this guy not only assumed the 50 customers, it also added like a 10% growth on those customers, right? So what you would do on a spreadsheet is basically take 700, multiply that by 110%, and then drag that formula on every cell. And what you end up with, if you do that, is very much a hockey stick chart, because you're just taking a number and multiplying it by 110% every month forever, right? So it's exponential growth. But why doesn't that work, right? What's wrong with that? Well, customers don't just come to us. It's not that, how are we getting these 50 customers? There's nothing in this model that assumed that we have to make any effort, or that we have to make any extra effort to grow that number of customers that we get every month. We're just magically adding 50 customers to our business. But what are we doing to get those customers? If there's one lesson, or if there's one screenshot, by the way, that you want to take, it's this slide that I'm in right now. Why? Because as we scale our company, we're going to have revenue, right? That's green at the top, right? We're going to have those costs at the bottom, right? We added AWS, red. And then we are going to have our other expenses, our salaries, right? That's basically the simple visual version of what we just did. But the question here is, well, what's driving our revenue? And what's driving our expenses, right? What makes our revenue grow, and what makes our expenses grow? And that actually needs some connections, right? Some causality in our financial model. I normally do a trivia question on this, but I'm going to skip it today. Okay, so the question is, well, what's driving our revenue? What's going to drive revenue for this company? Potential drive. And by the way, revenue or whatever KPI could be orders. In this case, could be your traffic, could be your subscriptions or your active users. Like, what's driving that? What do you do, or what do you spend in your company that drives more of these things? And at the same time, when you have more orders or when you have more traffic or when you have more customers, what happens? What other expenses are kind of tied to that? We talked about AWS, right? So in theory, if we have more customers, more people on our platform, we're going to have more server costs, right? Those are kind of pegged and connected together. So that's kind of what we're trying to connect here, like the logic that we're trying to build here. And it is a bit of a logic. It is a bit of a causality. That we could maybe express with a bit of a flow chart, right? So in theory, if we have revenue, the more revenue we have, the more costs we're going to have, right? Again, remember the color coding, cost of goods sold, the ones that are tied to the gross profit margin. The more revenue we have, the more costs, right? If you have more customers, you have more AWS fees. If you're an e-commerce, if you have more revenue, more orders, you're going to have to spend more to ship those orders or to buy the products that you're reselling, right? So those are always going to be tied together, directly connected. But also, and probably the part that most people forget about is, well, is there something that drives the revenue, right? Is there something that the company does? There's some activity that the company does that drives the revenue, and there is, right? And to your question, how can we minimize this mistake? That's exactly the way you solve this. It's like understanding that revenue is not an input. Revenue is not 50 customers every month. That's it. It's something that you have to do first in order to convert that revenue. So let's look at some of those drivers, right? Some of those potential drivers of revenue. One potential driver could be paid marketing, right? So we could say that a company runs search ads or display or retargeting or sponsorships, and that's going to drive additional revenue. Another potential driver could be sales, right? So we have a sales team, and we scale that sales team that's doing outbound calls, or like, I don't know, now you don't do a lot of outbound anymore, but like using some AI to qualify leads. But the driver is, well, the bigger our sales team that's driving this demand in our platform, the bigger our revenue is going to be, right? So there's some causality, right? If we double the sales team, in theory, we should double the revenue, right? And that makes your sales team a driver of revenue. Another potential driver could be organic traffic. We could say, we have this amount of people that visit our landing page every month, and we control that through social media or SEO. And the more traffic that we have, the more leads we get, the more signups we get, the more revenue we have. And another potential driver could be returning customers, right? We could say that customers churn out at a certain rate, or that we retain this certain amount of customers, and then we end up with some renewal revenue because of that. So all of these are potential drivers of revenue. But if we follow our color coding, we actually would need to color code these a little different, because if we remember, we had this category in our model, which was blue at the bottom for expenses. And some of these are expenses. Paid marketing is an expense. We have to spend that money on ads in order to generate that revenue. And outbound sales is an expense. We need to hire that team, and we need to pay those salaries. We need to put butts in seats to generate that expansion in outbound sales. Actually, organic traffic and return customers, there's also an expense tied to them, right? They're not magical. We don't just magically get virality or traffic. There's probably a marketing team that's behind that's driving it. And there's probably a retention team that's driving our returning customers. The big difference between these is that they're not so directly driven. For example, if you do paid marketing, if you're doing meta ads, ads on Instagram, and you go from 10K a month in budget to 20K a month in budget for ads, in theory, you should more or less double the amount of leads that you bring in. There's always a cap on your campaigns and so on, but in theory, maybe in a smaller number, if you go from $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month, you probably should get twice the amount of leads or twice the amount of traffic, right? So there's a very direct causality between those. But in organic traffic, doesn't really work like that, because if you, for example, if you have an SEO team and you go and double your SEO team, are you going to get double the traffic? Nobody. We don't know, right? Maybe you'll get triple the traffic because you hired a great team, or the Google algorithm blessed you. But for the most part, if you double your marketing team or your SEO team, you're not necessarily going to double traffic. It doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't connect directly. But still, we understand that these things like the traffic or the paid marketing or the returning customers, those are drivers to revenue. And there's one other thing that we can understand about this structure, which is we're converting, in this case, dollars of spend into dollars of revenue. And we would do that through, say, for example, cost of acquisition, right? So if you spend a certain amount of dollars in paid marketing, and for every $100 that we spend, we get a customer, then that's how we convert paid marketing to revenue. And we need to understand not just how much we spent, but also how efficiently did we spend that budget, right? How do we convert? How are we moving cost of acquisition to revenue? Same goes with outbound sales, right? We could have a sales per agent. Same idea goes with organic traffic. We have a conversion rate from the landing page for the website, or for returning customers, we have a churn rate that lets us understand all of these. So this causality is kind of what we're looking to make. So like I said, we have some color coding we've been using. It's probably, hopefully, a bit obvious by now, but it connects to a little bit to another thing I'm going to show you. But yeah, so revenue, costs, SG&A, and yeah, so that'll make what's coming make sense. So let me go back to do a quick demo here. Okay, so what I have here is what I call financial model maps. And this is kind of like the more elaborate version of what I've been showing you. And let me just take an example, for example, of a SaaS business. So so in this SaaS, and probably I can make this a little bigger. Okay. So in this self-service SaaS business, right? So it's a typical SaaS. Let me take, I don't know, like Netflix, or Netflix is not SaaS, but ClickUp, right? So you go, you sign up for ClickUp on your own. You don't need any sales team to convert you to ClickUp. It's more of a self-service thing, right? So what's happening here? Well, what I'm seeing is, what I have here is that we have two drivers for the revenue of this potential company, which are paid marketing that we convert into signups, right? So we have a certain budget of paid marketing. This is a driver. Notice that it has this blue arrow here, and we're converting paid marketing dollars into signups through this cost per signup, right? And then from organic traffic too, we have this organic traffic here, which is a SEO referrals. Again, people going to your landing page, and we have this conversion rate, a sign-up conversion rate. So how efficient is our landing page at converting people into signups, right? Now, this is, again, the causality I was talking about, but one advantage that we have here is that these numbers, they're not rocket science. They're actually pretty standardized. So a cost per sign up on any paid marketing campaign is probably going to be somewhere in the 15, 20 bucks, I would expect to be an acceptable cost per sign up. And for example, our conversion rate, a good landing page, I Googled this yesterday, by the way. A good landing page, or an average landing page conversion rate, is 6%. Up to 10%. That'd be a really good landing page. So we know, I mean, as you launch, right, as you start getting data, you'll of course be able to track what this number is. But if you don't know what this number is, and you need to guess, right, on how big your business scales, there are standards that we can use. And these numbers you can easily Google, right? You can find that, an average conversion rate is this. And if, for example, you assume that your landing page conversion rate is going to be 50%, that's kind of weird, right? That's just too good of a conversion rate. And when you look at that in a financial model, or in a company's assumptions, it's okay, like, why is your landing page so good, right? Why is it better than the average? What are you doing that's incredibly good about that landing page? I would say that it's really hard to defend a 50% conversion rate assumption, right? And when investors look at that and look at your assumptions, they'll be able to, they'll normally raise a flag and say, well, some of your assumptions are a bit too optimistic, probably. But let's keep going on this map, right? So we're driving marketing. That's what we can control, right? We control our paid marketing expense. We control our organic traffic. That drives signups. And then we have the total number of signups, some from paid, some from organic. And then these signups we convert from sign up into customers. And we already have benchmarks for that. In the US, I'd say a good conversion rate is around 3%. If you're like launching in the rest of the world, for the most part, other than bigger economies, your conversion rates from free assuming there's a free trial, to paid is probably going to be about 1%. But again, those are standards. No platform converts freemium customers or free trials into paid at a 70% rate. That just doesn't happen, right? So that that proportion is important. And then we have customers. And then, of course, here your input for this would be your pricing, right? So it would say, it's, I don't know, 49 a month. And then that gives us this conversion from customers to sales, right? And basically by mapping, and we call this financial model mapping, by mapping your model into these flow charts, you can kind of start to understand how your business could operate, right? I have another one example, now that we understand the logic of this, which is e-commerce. Not too different from what we did. In e-commerce, we also have a paid marketing and an organic traffic driver. And those, instead of driving signups, because we don't have trials here, we would drive orders, right? So again, what's the cost of acquisition per order? What's a conversion rate on a website from people that visit an e-commerce to orders? That's probably a standard that you can find. And that gives us orders. From orders, we have the total number of orders that we got, which gives us a revenue per order, or, for every order that we ship, we have to pay for shipping and handling, and of course the cost of the goods. This particular sheet has a little complication, or a little extra functionality, which is that we could assume that from everybody that sets up any order, we have a certain number of customers that become regulars, right? Like they'll buy once, but they'll come back. They become loyal customers of this e-commerce. So maybe those active customers have repeat orders. So when we talk about orders, we are not only dealing with orders from new customers, but also with orders from repeat customers, because some of them come back and buy again, right? And this is, again, the simplest e-commerce map I could think of. You can obviously get more elaborate with this. You can start working with inventory, or you can start working with, with different SKUs and, size of the order and so on. But I always recommend just start with the very basics and move from there. Also, another advantage here is that when you have a budget, right? So let's say that we have a budget of $1,000 here in paid marketing, and we're trying to understand how many signups that budget is going to drive. And we said that a standard cost per signup is about $10, right? So what we have here is a really, really simple math operation, right? All we really have to do is divide 1,000 by 10, and we end up with the number of customers, 100 customers, right? Or in this case, if we have 1,000 visitors to our website, and we know that our landing page conversion is 6%, right? We're just really multiplying. So it's not rocket science what we're doing here. So 1,000 times 60, that's going to be 60, right? So it's not that complicated, the math. We're just doing simple multiplications and divisions. What's complicated, or what's much harder to grasp, is the outline or the map, right? This flow chart of, okay, dollars spent in marketing to signups to customers. But once we understand that, we can do everything. We can do everything in a spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a sec and ask you if you have any questions so far. I know I speak a little fast first, but right off the get-go, but yeah, no questions? Looks like we got it. Okay, so now we're gonna put this on a spreadsheet, right? We're gonna use this logic, this flow chart system that we've been exploring, and we're actually gonna use a good spreadsheet to do it. So let me share the link to that if you guys if you guys are impatient and want to download it. So that's the link to the good spreadsheet. My team's gonna help me paste it on the chats, but you can snatch the QR code, or just go to financialmodel.slidebean.com/go. And that's going to give you a free access to our main good spreadsheet, not the bad one. Okay, got the link, snatched it, ready? Okay, so let me show you how to do a good financial model. Just a sec. Okay, so notice that this is not too different from what we saw earlier in the session, except that now we have a few extra quirks and a few extra perks. So the same idea, same structure, same color coding for the most part, but we have some features now. Notice, for example, that this model has this purple section here. Notice that through October, it's purple, And that's because those are actuals months, right? So we know that October is a month that's in the past, or the model knows that October is a month that's in the past. So it's going to color code that differently. So that's the first feature. Another good feature is that notice that we used to have these blue inputs for revenue and for costs, but now these numbers are black, which means that we can no longer just input revenue just because. We need to come up with a way to generate that revenue. We can't just magically assume revenue. So that's another factor. Yeah, so everything here is black, and we have a bunch of other stuff. We have a balance sheet here and a cash flow statement. If you're from a financial background, this is going to make more sense. If not, don't worry. You're For the most part, we're going to be operating in this section we've been seeing, which is the income statement. But now we have a bunch of other tabs down here, as you can see. So I'm going to go to the assumptions tab first. So notice that here in the assumptions tab, we have what we call a sample revenue line. And this sample revenue line has some of the stuff that I've been showing you. We have paid marketing and we have organic traffic. Check it out. So we have organic acquisition, and we can assume a certain number of visits, right? So we can say, oh, well, this company's going to get 1,000 visits a month. We're going to launch, right? So we're October now, so that's in the past. We can move that down now. If we start the business today, assume that we start working on this today, we're probably going to be launching by March, right? So we can use that to push the model further. Another good feature that we have is, okay, so we have the organic traffic. We have how much does that traffic grow monthly, right? We could assume, I don't know, 5% growth of traffic. And then that conversion rate from traffic to sign up, exactly the thing that we saw here, right? And that 15% placeholder, I'm probably going to change it because if the standard is 6%, then we should be closer to the standard, right? We also have paid marketing acquisition, right? Which is this box here. And this we can be more aggressive, right? We can try different options and say, well, let's start more aggressive. Let's start on a 5K budget. Let's grow that budget by 10% every month. And then let's start with an expected cost per sign up of let's do 50, right? $15. Notice that how everything in the model is changing as I adjust these values, and that's the idea. Okay. The next thing that we have is our conversion rate from signups to paid, right? So how many of our signups here convert? And we said that in the US, that standard would be about 3%. So I'm just going to stick with that. And then last but not least, we have our pricing, the pricing of our products, or the average revenue per user, right? So if you have multiple seats or multiple plans, my suggestion is just to work out of a standard, out of an average, and say, okay, like our average subscription for this product is going to be, I don't know, $99 a month. We have a churn rate, right? So how often customers cancel or how long we retain them. And last but not least, the hosting costs, right? Because remember that we had this causality here. For every revenue that we make, we also have to deal with the hosting costs, as we talked about earlier. So for every active customer, we're probably going to spend not too much, maybe a couple of dollars a month in just our hosting fees, maybe $3. And also our credit card processing, right? If you're using Stripe, you're going to get billed something like 2.9% per transaction. And that's it. So now the assumption of revenue for this company is not all guesswork, right? We've actually put some thought into this, and we're using some real standards for what conversion rates could look like. And we are getting something here, right? We are getting, notice that we have revenue growing all the way to 15K, at least in the span of this chart. Also, this black line is our net income. So net income is negative because at the beginning we're spending all this money in marketing, but as we start building a customer base and those customers renew, we start to turn a profit. And we can, of course, dig a little deeper on that here in the monthly sheet, where we can see March, we see our revenue starting, right, and our revenue scaling. We see our costs scaling. We can even zoom out into the annual, right, and see how this business that we're forecasting, again, with real logic, with real thinking behind those assumptions, it's pushing all the way to a $39 million company at some point, right? So we have to obviously review that, but looks like we're on the right track. To your question, Edgar, hosting costs mean like cloud infrastructure, AWS. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I normally assume. And those are usually pretty small, even if you're using, LLMs or you're paying API fees for ChatGPT. Those are usually a few dollars per user in my experience. Yeah, for video hosting, that's a little bit more expensive, but overall, you should be good with that assumption. Okay. So what do we do next, right? We have a model, but we haven't added expenses. We have added marketing expenses, but we haven't added anything else. So let's just keep on this assumption sheet to see what else it gives us. Notice that we have direct access to our costs sheet. Costs is a sheet, so we can go to payment processing, for example. And if we link to that, we'll see that we have a sheet that's entirely dedicated to our hosting costs, right? There's some automation here where we added, these hosting costs per active user. Notice that those numbers are black, so we've produced those numbers through the other assumptions. But we have a lot of blue space here. So if you're using AWS and you have this flat fee for some hosting thing that you have to pay, again, that starts in November. We can just add that, or Webflow, which could be your I love Webflow. It's our like website builder. That's what, $99 a month. So we can just forecast for that as well. Again, we have Stripe here, credit card processing costs. That's in the black. So like our model is already accounting for that. But we have all these placeholders that you can use for other stuff. Okay, so that's costs. Let's look at operating expenses, right? The blue category, the blue category of costs, or yeah, expenses. We have some staff happening here. So for example, we could say, we could have Edgar be the CEO. I'm gonna add myself as COO. And then let's bring somebody from Zoom. Who else do we have who's been active? Sorry, didn't find anything. Yeah. Anyway, let's just add Bruce Wayne. Let's add Bruce Wayne as CTO. Okay, so what we can do with these roles is we can enable them here. Yeah, we can enable, assuming that we're going to have that hire. And we can define when we start paying these employees. But for that, we kind of need money first, right? We need a round of funding. So how do we manage that? So right now, again, we're in October, right? Ideally, we shouldn't have any expenses before October. And if you're raising money, if you're going to investors, chances are a round of funding is going to take about 6 months to close. That's just what it is. We're closing November. We're close to the holidays. So in reality, if we were to start raising money today, there's a good chance that our pre-seed round would probably close around here. Pre-seed. I'd say April is a good safe bet. Maybe May as a good safe bet. So that's pre-seed. So let's say that us as founders, we injected a little bit of money into the company. We had a little bit of saving. We have some savings, and we maybe pushed, I don't know, 25K. All three of us kind of together, we brought in 25K. But here at pre-seed, we need this 25K to last all the way to pre-seed. Right now, our cash balance at the end of the month is red. It's really red because the model is currently assuming that we've been paying ourselves all this year, but that's not really what's happening, right? We're only really going to pay ourselves after we raise money. That'd be the plan. So here in assumptions, I can actually go and choose that pre-seed input that I just added, and I can say, oh, let's only assume for these salaries. I'm paying myself less. I'm being nice to you guys. Let's only assume this pre-seed, this employee hire after, or this founder in this case, after we raise money, right? So if we go back to the monthly sheet, notice that this is clean now. We have no expenses, and our team only really kicks in kind of around here in pre-seed, when we close the pre-seed. And that's generally the idea. And if I move this, that applies as well, right? If I'm late on my pre-seed, funding isn't flowing, we can just push that a little bit further and make sure that we haven't run out of money. Now, one thing with that is that we had assumed that we were launching in March, but now that you know that raising money takes 6 months, and we probably want to raise money before we launch, when we need that money to finish the product or whatever, probably our launch date's going to be pushed a little bit. There's a good chance our launch date's probably going to be October. Right, so we're delaying that a little longer. What does that mean? Well, it means that we have negative cash here. We are, as the moment that we, even though we raised this pre-seed, I mean, we haven't added the amount of the pre-seed, but our 25K run out, and we have these negative numbers here. Now, what's important here is that raising money, you normally raise money through phases, right, through milestones. So you have to make sure that whatever money you raise for pre-seed is enough to reach the next fundable milestone. Oh, October, I did October 25. It's October 26. My bad. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so whatever money we raise for pre-seed needs to be enough to get to the next fundable milestone for this business. And what's a fundable milestone? Well, the next round that you could raise as a startup, which is a seed round, you normally would raise when you've hit somewhere in the 30K in revenue, right? So kind of somewhere around here. Yeah, that's for maybe 25 or something like this, right? So this is when we could raise our seed round. So basically, what our model needs to do is, or I mean, what we need to do is raise enough money to get here. We can assume that once we hit 25K, we have seed metrics. We can go to a new round of investors and pitch and raise another round of funding, right? And that's going to take 6 months too. So again, if that's in November 27, we'll go out and we'll start raising money again, and that's going to give us, funding by May. So let's call this milestone seed milestone, and let's call this seed close. Right, so it takes 6 months. So in theory, based on what we have so far, we need to raise something like this amount, 317. So again, let's try that. I'm going to round it up to 350. So let's round that to 350. If we do that, we'll have enough money to launch. We'll have this. We'll reach the milestone with 83K in the bank, and we'll be able to close the seed still with 32K in the bank. That's the exercise of a financial model. Truly, what you want to do is go through these exercises, because we haven't added everything. Oh, God, sorry, we haven't added everything, right? If we go to here and we want more staff because we need a bigger team, we have a full dedicated staff sheet here. But you can start adding, I don't know, senior developers to your team. You can start adding junior developers. You can add, I mean, we're not assuming sales, but we're assuming a marketing team that's going to be running those ads. And as we add more people, these numbers break again, because now we've added all these salaries, and we need to account, or the round needs to account for that. So to me, the most important part of all this financial modeling process is that you understand the sheet so well that you can go and run these numbers and run these run these estimations or these what if scenarios back and forth all the time, based on reality, based on how well the round is progressing, based on your own metrics, and seeing how if you can afford the hire next month, or if you need to push that, or if you can afford the salary raise, etc. Like, this becomes kind of like a worksheet, not just something that you deliver to investors, but actually the sheet that runs your company. That's the idea of a financial model. So here's a link again if you need to grab it. I have some good time for questions. But just in case, or just before that, a quick commercial. Here's how we can help. We have a full-on financial modeling bootcamp course. It's just $99. We're gonna paste the link in the chats. It's like, consider our bootcamp like a far extended version of what we've done today. I think it's like 5-6 hours long, all pre-recorded. And also we have a service where our team actually takes over building a model for you, right? So this template, again, is free. You can access it in Slidebean. But if you, for example, if your model doesn't fit our standard SaaS, many of your companies won't, or if you're a marketplace or a more complicated e-commerce, or you need some custom functionality here on how your team scales, then our team can help you build that, and we can help you maintain the model and run the model with you. And we do actually a monthly sync with the team to make sure that the model is up to date and that you're forecasting well. That, of course, comes with all the other features on Slidebean, our cap table builder, our cap table template. We have an investor finder with over 25,000 investors that we've crawled the web from. We have a financial model tool and our pitch deck builder, of course. Okay, I think that's all I have. Yeah. Let me stop the screen share and give you guys some time if you have questions. Otherwise, we can call it a day. Any questions? Any takers? No? You're also quiet. Oh, there you go. Chat. Okay. Oh, great insights. Thanks so much. You're welcome, Edgar. Okay. Looks like we don't have any questions, which is great. I don't know if I was overwhelming, or if it was clear. I'm getting from Kenneth that it was clear, hopefully. So hopefully the template is useful for you guys. Bunch of documentation, bunch of videos around it. Mohammed, appreciate it. This is, hope this is all useful. Oh, book recommendations. Man, that's a good question. Honestly haven't read that many books lately. My two good books on like kind of founder journey. One is called, I'm trying to find it because I think I had it here. Three book recommendations I have for you. One is called The Lean Startup. It's old, but it's kind of like startup basics, I think. Uh, it's by Eric Rice. I have another book called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. I think it's like very much connected to this, but more from the marketing or this growth strategy. I think all the stuff that you see in this book, Traction, kind of connects to what we're seeing in the financial model, but more from a strategy standpoint rather than a budgeting standpoint. And the last one I'll recommend is a book called Underdog Founder. Edicio, who's the writer, is a founder that I met a couple years ago. He sold his company to MasterCard, but he considers himself an underdog founder and had a big, painful story of going from where he started to selling his company to MasterCard. And it's like this really open book, like thorough book on what his journey was. And I thought it was very inspiring. So those three, I'd say. Christian, no specific questions, but thanks so much for sharing. You've given me good. Glad that it was useful. Glad it was all useful, man. Thanks for the feedback. All right. So if anybody, I think somebody asked that they were late. Like this is gonna live in our this was live streamed through our Startup Club channel. If you don't follow the Startup Club on YouTube, you should. It's like a much more eloquent, better cut, better edited version of me kind of covering all of these topics. And we have a bunch of videos around cap tables and equity structure and all of that. So I think that you're going to find those useful as well if you don't know about them. That's all I have today. Thanks for coming in.